Tom Cruise has been the face of the Mission Impossible franchise since its inception, with his portrayal of Ethan Hunt becoming the cornerstone of this adrenaline-fueled series. For over 2 decades, audiences have been glued to their screens as Cruise's daredevil secret agent embarks on increasingly perilous missions to save the world. However, as the franchise has evolved, it has introduced a slew of characters who have added new layers and fresh dynamics to the storylines, characters that have ultimately become just as important, if not more so, than Hunt himself. Among the most iconic additions to this franchise is Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa Faust, a character who has managed to capture the hearts of fans and challenge the conventions of action cinema. The arrival of Ilsa Faust. Breaking the mold. Ilsa Faust made her explosive debut in 2015's Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, where she broke new ground as the franchise's first major female lead. Unlike so many female characters in action films, who are often relegated to roles as mere romantic interests or sidekicks, Ilsa arrived as a formidable force in her own right. A highly skilled intelligence operative with a murky past, she was independent, complex, and, at times, morally ambiguous, a far cry from the typical one-dimensional women often seen in blockbuster franchises. Rebecca Ferguson's performance injected Ilsa with an unpredictable allure, combining charm with a sense of toughness that made her a force to be reckoned with. Her character was far from a mere addition to Ethan Hunt's team. She was a wild card, someone whose true intentions were often clouded in mystery, keeping both Hunt and the audience on their toes. This complexity immediately elevated the stakes of the mission. Impossible Saga, expanding the franchise from a simple action thriller to a high-stakes spy drama where trust, loyalty, and betrayal hung in the balance. A rising star. Within the franchise. As the series continued with Mission Impossible, Fallout in 2018, Ilsa's presence grew increasingly essential to the overarching narrative. Far from just an ally to Ethan Hunt, she became a key figure, someone whose motivations were often in flux, adding layers of intrigue and tension to the plot. She was no longer a sidekick. She was a necessary part of the story, a character whose fate was inextricably linked to Ethan's, and whose own personal journey added emotional depth to the explosive action sequences. This evolution of Ilsa Faust didn't just make the action more thrilling, it made it emotionally resonant. Her complex relationship with Ethan, full of trust and tension, allowed for moments of vulnerability and personal stakes in an otherwise high-octane series. A heartbreaking loss, Ilsa Faust's final act. However, despite all of this, fans were left reeling by what many felt was an untimely and emotionally devastating loss in Mission Impossible. Dead Reckoning, Part 1. In a gut-wrenching sequence set on a Venetian bridge, Ilsa Faust confronts the villain Gabriel in a brutal fight. The scene ends with Faust being stabbed in the heart, and she seemingly dies in Ethan's arms, leaving audiences in shock. The emotional impact of Ilsa's death was profound. She wasn't just a character. It felt as though a piece of the franchise's heart had been ripped out. Fans had grown deeply attached to her, and her death left many wondering if this really was the end of her arc. Legacy of Ilsa Faust. A shining beacon in action. Cinema. As Mission Impossible moves forward, many will undoubtedly look back on Ilsa Faust as a character who represented something more than just a secondary role. She was a beacon of progress in action cinema, a symbol of how female characters can be as integral, complex, and memorable as their male counterparts. Fans continue to mourn her loss, but they also celebrate her as a trailblazer, proof that women can be just as tough, just as smart, and just as essential to the plot as the men who often dominate these stories. In the end, Ilsa Faust's journey through the mission. Impossible Saga is a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between star-driven narratives and the importance of fully realizing the potential of supporting characters. With better creative collaboration, perhaps she could have had a lasting impact on the franchise for years to come. And as we move forward in this high-stakes world of espionage and action, fans can only hope that the lessons learned from Ilsa Faust's arc will inspire future storytelling that gives all characters the space they need to truly shine.